Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is another in my practice session series for the Red Hat Certified Specialist in Managing Automation with Ansible Automation Platform Exam EX467. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who's watching, if you haven't subscribed, to click the subscribe button and ring the bell. Also, a reminder, these are my practice sessions before the exam. It's my goal to go through all of the posted objectives by Red Hat and either demonstrate whatever it is the objective is talking about or discuss the concept behind the objective. And at the end of the video, I'll do a little self-assessment and hopefully I'll feel confident with the objective and ready to go for the exam. But if not, I have just a couple of days before my exam. Obviously not enough time to learn anything new, but a little bit of time to do some review to try to get some stuff back on the front side of my mind. That being said, these should not be considered tutorials, nor should they be considered training materials or authoritative information. I do try to have the information accurate because at this point in my preparation, hopefully I have not learned inaccurate information, but understand that I'm learning right along with you. I put these out on the internet in hopes of those that are also preparing for this exam might see some of the stuff that I do and get some ideas of things that they can do for their preparation. But again, these should not be considered tutorials or training materials. So in a previous video, I talked about a couple of the areas of these objectives that are weaker than others. And one was dealing with smart inventories and making sure I have the syntax for using Ansible facts under my fingers, which I have since practiced that some and have it a bit better. The other is dealing with the API. And so in this video, I'm going to do a practice session with the work with the Automation Controller API and the couple of subtopics underneath. And this, I have a cursory understanding of how APIs work. Basically, you are sending either GET, POST, and I think there are a couple other types of web requests to a particular web service. And that web service, if you are properly authenticated, if it's an authenticated API, it will do the thing that you want. And in theory, you could do all the configuration for Automation Controller using the API. And the API can either be, or rather you can communicate with the API either just through curl commands, or you can use the Ansible built-in URI module to basically send HTTP requests the same way that you send your curl commands. You can also interface with the API using the modules in the Ansible.controller collection, which I think I worked on in some previous videos. There's one other, and this is something I'm going to try to demonstrate here. I'm going to first of all, I'm going to log into my control node. I'll do that as an administrator. I don't necessarily have to log into this first. I could log in from the page that I'll be going to, but this will also give me a chance to check real quick, make sure I have some of the stuff that I wanted to, that I want to practice on. So you can explore the API for Automation Controller actually from the web. So you can go to your controller's URL and /API/v2. And this is the API. This is all the stuff that you can potentially do with it. So in addition to running curl commands or using the URI module or using modules within the Ansible.controller collection, you can actually make API calls and such from this this interface. For example, or sort of for an example, this is a GET that I have done for this. There, actually, let me just get right into it. So the thing that the objectives are explicitly wanting you to do is deal with jobs. And this is, in my opinion, a little, I think what they really mean is like job templates. Because if you think about it, prior to, running a job template, a job probably has not occurred yet on your Automation Controller. And so therefore, if you're trying to, for example, use API script to obtain required parameters for launching jobs, well, it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. So this can be used for querying the jobs themselves, but I think kind of the intention is launching job templates. But I may be wrong. Hopefully I'm not. But I'll find out in a few days if I am, and if I am, maybe that, or hopefully that won't be enough for me to not pass the exam. working under the assumption that we're talking about job templates, going back to the API, if I wanted, so I'm in just the regular, API v2, there is API v2 job templates that if I were to click that, this is effectively running the get command, and that will show JSON with all of the different job templates that are configured and all of the various parameters for them. And if you want, you can pick the job template that you would desire. Let me set up webserver.yml. That's the one that I want to launch. I think that is number 11. So what we can do, there is a URL for launch. So if I were to click this, right now it by default is doing a GET request. So this is giving us all of the various, I guess, properties, for lack of a better phrase, for the URL to launch the template. But to actually launch it, notice it says it allows get, post, head options. Not 100% sure what head and options will do, but doing a post request will launch this job template. And we can put that to the test right in here, and then we'll try to do some command line stuff. So let me go to jobs. And so right now we've as you can see, I've practiced this a couple of times. So we're going to, this allows you to choose, I guess, the way the data is formatted. But if we wanted to do a post request for this job template, when you scroll to the bottom, you can actually click post and it will do the thing. We get what is returned from that, which somewhere around here it should say status pending, which, the job is at that exact moment is pending. It hasn't run yet. And if I were to go back to my automation controller, we now see that we have the 7th job, set up the web server. I'm surprised it didn't have a finish time or start time. Let me refresh this. Maybe it'll show one. There's a start time. And if you look at my clock here in the VM, 8:20 p.m., 8:19 p.m., this is the job. So we have used the API to launch this job, which I believe that is, write an API scriptlet to launch a job. Now, one other critique I have, and this critique isn't like, I know better than Red Hat, but I'm just thinking about, if you're a person that's just looking at the objectives, what does this mean? Well, in my opinion, scriptlet is maybe like a 1 or 2 line script. There's no clear definition as to what that is. I mean, in theory, you could say that this little thing is a scriptlet and I'm clicking the button to post it. But suppose we can do a couple of things to practice, understand how to launch an API script to obtain required parameters for launching jobs. Well, we did that in the GUI. If I wanted to, I could go into the terminal and I could do a curl command. I could do curl, I think capital X is what we need for this. We're going to do a get method, do the URL. You can do -K if you don't want to deal with the SSL, but I know that this particular VM trusts the CA that gives the certificate for this. So was that internal? No, lab controller. internal.ejslab.com API v2, and it was job templates. One thing to remember is that you do have to have the trailing slash there. And okay, so to actually see the job templates, we have to be authenticated. If we want to do not the job templates, that's kind of odd. That will give us all the JSON that we saw on that first page. So to authenticate, what you can do is do --user, and you would give the username and password. Before I do this, let me clear my screen. We'll do this again. So curl -x get https lab-controller.internal.ejslab.com/API/v2/job templates --user, and I'm using a test admin and the password. And it spits out a bunch of JSON. What we could do is pipe that to the JQ command, and we'll get a little bit more, easily readable thing. And so while hopefully this is not going to be use API script to parse JSON to then feed that to a playbook, because if that's the case, I'm kind of sunk because I do not have the skills of that. Maybe one day, but I could sift through this information, as a human and figure out, the ID and get the URL for the job template and get the URL for launching it and then run the curl command. That would be a post to do that. There's another, you can also use tokens for authentication. I don't, off the top of my head, remember the syntax for that. That might be one of the little last things I brush up on. But I do know that username and password, the basic authentication stuff works. But again, APIs are not my strongest area. Maybe someday they will be, but not now. I did want to mention a gotcha, and let's see if I have, go to project 3, because I was practicing some of this stuff. Gather the templates. Let me look at this. Okay, this is when I was doing some GET requests, basically doing the same thing and trying to parse through some of the information. I know there is a JSON query filter that you can use that comes from the community.general collection, so that may not be available to us on the exam. Otherwise, I think it's select ATTR, and that can be used to try to pull out some of the specific JSON stuff. I don't know how to do advanced stuff with that, but what we could try to do here, let's see, this is grabbing all the job templates. Let me do this. I'm going to just do number 11. And as you can see here, I'm using some variables to make this be a little nicer. I'm going to show the jobs. Well, it'll be the job. By default, the built-in URI is expecting status code 200. And that was going to be one of the gotchas. I noticed when I'm doing a post, the status code is 201. And so if you're doing that, you'll want to make that change. Otherwise, you'll get an error, and we'll try to demonstrate that. Or I'll try to demonstrate that. All right, so this, in theory, should work. I guess I could do Ansible Navigator to, be all official about it. The templates, I think I have this set to run in standard, put the output in standard out. Let's say for this, we wanted to just get the name attribute. Pretty sure there's an attribute called name. Yeah, and the name of that job is set up the web server. That's the pretty name that's in the GUI. What I could do is filter this, select ATTR, I believe, and we want to select, I know you can do, you can give this some logic as well, like something equals something else, but in this case, we are just selecting name. And I believe if we wanted to, we could also filter this with the map filter to give that attributed property, I believe is something that we could do. But let's see what happens. We should get just the name of that job template. No, we did not. Oh well. So that's something I might try to brush up on in the last couple of days, try to have in the front of my head. The thing is, at this point in anyone's preparation, you're not going to learn anything new just a few days before the exam. So I'm kind of banking on being strong in all the other areas, and I'm also kind of banking on Red Hat maybe not giving you super complicated stuff to do with the API. But I'll find out, and unfortunately when I do, I can't tell you because of NDA. All right, what I did want to do was launch a job template using the API. So, which actually I think 11's the special one that has been what I use to set up the little web server. So I'm going to change this to status code 201. Otherwise, even though it will be successful, it will fail because of the status code not matching 200. And I just know that's going to be launch / and we'll just show the, we'll try to do select attribute this time. We'll just show the variable. Nope, not run the template. We want to use the run command to gather the templates. Even though we're not gathering, we are executing. No errors. Notice the status code 201. If this had been 200, the job would have still run. However, Ansible would have reported an error because that was by default it's expecting status code 200. And we see that job number 8 should be this job, and we can go to our automation controller and we see that setup web server has been run. Now, one nice thing about this, as far as the controller, even though we executed this with the API, we do see the actual output, which I think is kind of nifty. So with the objectives, write an API scriptlet to launch a job. I mean, that can be a bash script with a curl command, or it can be a playbook with URI, or there should be a way to launch the job with Ansible.controller modules as well, and understand how to use API script to obtain required parameters. If the task is going to be, do some elegant filtering of JSON, then I'm not going to do well with that. But if it's for whatever reason we can't use the web browser to be able to browse the API, then I could, as a human, sift through the JSON and figure out the URLs needed to get the information that I need for particular job templates to launch. Or if jobs already exist that have launched, you can relaunch them with the API as well. So I'm not going to consider this a complete fail, but it is clearly not the strongest of my areas. So if you found the video useful or enjoyed it in some way, make sure you do click like and feel free to share it with others. I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video and invite you, if you haven't subscribed yet, to click that subscribe button and ring the bell when you do, so you can be aware of when new content comes available. Thanks for your time, and I will see you the next time.